Alex Salmond, thanks for coming on the programme. I wonder what you made of the Prime Minister's speech this morning, because there did seem to be a change in tone there, didn't there? I mean, you always called it Project Fear. Well, he was dropping a few love bombs this morning, wasn't he?
Oh, I think he's leaving Project Fear to his minions. I think the change in tone is because of the change in the polls. We've now had 7 successive polls showing a narrowing of the gap between no and yes gaining ground. So I think there's a bit of panic reaction. But I thought it was very strange. I mean, can you actually make a speech in the cavernous velodrome of magic mirrors that was devoid of atmosphere? All the more reason I would suggest for having a real debate, you know, when people answer you back, when the arguments can be tested here in Scotland.
But didn't it resonate at one level with you? I mean, the great Scottish athletes who had these incredible triumphs there last year, Sir Chris Hoyes, I mean, this is something surely that everyone in the United Kingdom shared in.
Yeah, but I think it was 2 years ago, actually. Time flies, but nonetheless, isn't it interesting? I mean, when the Prime Minister attends, as I hope he does, the Commonwealth Games in a few months' time, you'll see great Scottish athletes and great English athletes compete with Scotland and England. Are these people going to be diminished because they're competing for Scotland, along with 70 other countries across the Commonwealth? Of course not. And I think that's one of the dangers when you start to try and assimilate sport into politics, like the Prime Minister was doing today.
But hang on a minute, you've done that yourself, haven't you?
You know, You've
done that yourself. Wimbledon,
I heard that.
Andy Murray.
Well, no, sorry.
The Saltire, is that not sport and politics?
Well, I think that's my point, really. You see, the Saltire is a Scottish flag. It's not an SNP flag. I've never gone about saying people shouldn't compete in Team GB. I'm just saying that competing in Team Scotland in the Commonwealth Games is as valid.
But the Prime Minister wasn't waving the Tory flag today in the velodrome either. He was talking about Great Britain.
The point I'm making is in the Commonwealth Games, people compete as Team Scotland. The curlers, the lady curlers, who I hope and believe may well win a medal in the Olympics, and every other theme of international competition, including the World Championships, they compete as Scotland and do very well. So whether people compete for Scotland, as I would wish, or compete for Team GB, they are not diminished in any way, as the Prime Minister was suggesting. That's the point I'm making.
But do you actually believe that when the Prime Minister says he loves the United Kingdom, that he's telling the truth?
Oh, I would never doubt the Prime Minister's veracity, except, of course, when he talks about the bedroom tax or nuclear weapons.
But I'm talking about the concept of Great Britain.
He's implementing. Look, I'm saying I don't doubt the Prime Minister feels the way he says he feels. Therefore, can he not understand that many of us in Scotland want a new and equal relationship in these islands where we have an independent parliament? And my contention with the Prime Minister is I don't believe by making Scotland stronger, you make the rest of the UK weaker. That was the heart of whatever argument he had today, was the idea that the rest of the UK would be diminished if Scotland got stronger. I think Scotland gets stronger and the whole gets stronger, apart from anything else in economic terms, because we'd have a new centre of economic gravity in the north of these islands to equalise things. We'd have a northern light instead of just the London Dark Star.
But what about the risks? And let's talk about the economic terms of this, because you want a currency union with Rump UK. The Treasury in London has said, not such a great idea. Mark Carney, the governor of the central bank, Bank of England, has said it's not such a good idea. So are you trying to have your haggis and eat it? Because there are some bits of union you don't like, and other bits you do.
Well, I'll ignore Rump UK. I'll just describe it as the rest of the UK, and I'll ignore the haggis and eat it. But just let's take the current argument. Mark Carney said no such thing. Mark Carney set out a speech, the terms in which a currency union could be successful. Interestingly enough, you'll have noticed that the one economist, apart from Adam Smith, that he cited in that speech was Jim Mirrlees, the Nobel laureate, who happens to be the author.
But he said it was fraught with problems.
Can I just make this point? He said monetary unions were fraught with problems unless you put in mechanisms to make them successful. He then described the mechanisms to make them successful. The one economist, apart from Adam Smith, he cited, Jim Mirrlees, is of course one of the authors of the Fiscal Commission for the Scottish Government, who put forward the proposition to make a monetary union successful, not just for Scotland, incidentally, but for the rest of the United Kingdom
but isn't that
as
the
well.
point?
That's the strength of the case that we're putting forward.
But you hit the nail on the head. You said mechanisms to make currency union successful. Isn't that the problem? Yeah. Because it is fraud. These mechanisms are fraught with risks. We've just seen in the European Union, in the Eurozone, how currency union virtually fell apart. If Mario Draghi hadn't said, I will do all it takes to save the currency, to save the euro. That's a massive gamble to take with the money of the people of Scotland, isn't it?
Well, the point we're making, and the point the Fiscal Commission and Jim Merley's made, is Scotland and England have similar degrees of productivity. There's not the 60% difference there is between Germany and Greece, and that's why you can have an optimal currency area between Scotland and England if you put forward sensible criteria, which the Fiscal Commission has done. Now, the advantages of monetary union, which Mark Carney listed in his speech as well, of course, is that where you've got such a great trading relationship, then it benefits the companies of Scotland and the companies of England to continue that relationship in the best possible way. We're trying to be as reasonable as possible about this. We want to retain the monarchical union, retain the Queen, the social union, the currency union. We just want to control
why
our
bother?
tax and spending.
If you want to retain all these things, why bother?
Because we want to control our taxation, our spending. We want to decide whether to have nuclear weapons or not on our soil. We want to decide not to go into illegal wars in Iraq. We want not to have the bedroom tax visited upon our people.
Forget about the bedroom tax,
socially just
but we cannot. But hang on,
society.
but we cannot. But you've just seen in the example of the Eurozone how when those countries are umbilically tied together through a fiscal union, you simply don't have those controls if you still have a currency union with London. You're gaining independence to leave some of it behind right here in this city.
Well, and I'm saying, yes, we wouldn't control the currency and interest rates, but we would control taxation and spending and all of the other key things I listed.
But they're all linked together. They're all linked together.
No, there are links, of course, but I don't think it's fair to talk about the Eurozone when we had within Europe, in the Benelux countries, a currency union which lasted for 60 years and was highly successful. So let's look at currency unions between countries with similar levels of productivity, as the Fiscal Commission did, and put forward some of the criteria for success. Some of these criteria were the same ones that Mark Carney listed. Let's have a rational argument. And above all, let's have a debate.
But this is not the currency.
Let's have a debate on these matters between the Prime Minister, who's against it, and I, and I, who am for it. Let's have a real debate.
This is not the currency union of the Benelux countries we're talking about. We're talking about Scotland, UK would be the same ratio as Belgium and Germany, virtually.
Sorry, the ratio of Belgium to Luxembourg was around 20-1, as opposed to around 10-1 of Scotland and the UK. And also, if you look at that currency union, the one that lasted 60 years, you'd see they had wide variations in corporate tax and personal tax. They pursued different economic policies, but were part of a currency union. Indeed, Mark Carney gave the example of the United States and Canada. Both have provinces and states with different taxation levels, different taxation rates. There is flexibility within a currency union. You have the ability to make your economy more prosperous and to have fiscal policies appropriate to your conditions, as well as all the other key things I mentioned, like deciding whether to go to war or not, having nuclear weapons and having a socially just society. Incidentally, lots of folk in Scotland think these things are very, very important indeed.
But the point is that the currency union might not be an option for you. It might not be given to you as an option by the Treasury in London.
Well, that's why we've argued, of course, that this is in the interests of Scotland and also in the interests of the rest of the UK. And of course, you'll have noticed there was a poll just a couple of weeks ago, which I think it was 71% of people in England said, well, if Scotland's independent, is it sensible to share the pound, which is our currency, as well as London's currency? Then of course it is. So I think I'd rely on the common sense and meter of the people of England as opposed to the Westminster elite, like Messrs Cameron and Osborne.
Tell me, if and when Scotland gets its independence, is there anything you personally are going to miss about the good old UK?
I won't miss things because we won't be losing things. The social union will continue. People will still travel, work between Scotland and England. We'll still visit our granny in Newcastle or our granny in Glasgow. I certainly won't miss Westminster government. And it's not just me that thinks that. I thought today, when the Prime Minister...
So is this about you just wanting to be called Prime Minister? Is that what this is about? About personal ambition?
No, that question, look, this is about whether Scotland has a new relationship and equality of status within these islands. A lot of people think that's a very serious argument. I was going to make the point, when the Prime Minister today said that people in England should phone up their relatives in Scotland to ask them to vote against Scottish independence in September, I think people in Somerset would be more likely to phone up Downing Street, demand that their Prime Minister gets his wellies on and gives them some help, as opposed to sleeping on the job, which is what he's been doing since Christmas. So a lot of people across these islands regard the Prime Minister and London government as being an elite who are out of touch with the people, not just of Scotland, but with many areas of England as well.
Just one final question, First Minister. At the moment, I think the latest polls indicate 29 in favour, 41 against, separation that is. I mean, these are the best numbers you've scored, I think, perhaps for, well, for a very long time, perhaps ever. What makes you confident that you can narrow that gap sufficiently to win in the relatively short amount of time still available to you?
Well, surely the best score was ICM last weekend, which was a gap of 4 points, 52 to 48. But I think the more significant thing is whether you take ICM or Systems 3, which you cited, or any poll, the last 7 polls have all shown a movement towards yes, the gap narrowing, yes, gaining ground, which is perhaps why the Prime Minister in a panic is changing tack today in his edict from on high. I just wish if he wants to enter the debate, he'd do so in a democratic fashion and have a debate on television, on Channel 4, here in Scotland, when people can answer them back and the arguments can be properly tested for no or for
Consider
yes.
yourself invited, both of you.
I accept.
OK. We just need the other guy to play ball as well. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure. Thank you.